Tonight on Joy News Prime, University of Ghana interdicts 2 of its lecturers indicted in the BBC documentary Sex for Grades and announces the matter is being investigated by its anti-sexual harassment committee. One of the lecturers indicted, Professor Jampo, says he will cooperate.
The decision is to ask me to step aside while they do investigation. I think I welcome that decision, and I'll submit myself through the investigation processes.
Some students of the university have, however, complained about the complaints procedure.
The system is protecting the predators, and the problem is that you can't trust a system where you report to a lecturer who is a friend of the one who is abusing you. So I think more has to be done when it comes to the anti-sexual harassment committee.
Tonight, we ask how the processes could be enhanced to encourage more victims to come forward, and also ask what provisions are there for members of the general public to also report such abuses. We intend to make the conversation relevant to as many of our viewers as possible. In another development, the police is advising the general public, especially ladies, against taking nude photos of themselves, as such nudes are increasingly being used to blackmail them.
Sexual images that you may have taken and mistakenly lost your phone, and the phones will get out to the criminals. They take it, they call you that, look, we have your picture. If you don't give us money, we are going to put it on the internet.
Former President John Mahama calls on the Ghana Bar Association to work towards expanding legal education in the country without necessarily compromising on quality. In business,
Bank of Ghana orders closure of forex bureaus operating without license.
They have to close down this very minute before we leave here. They have to go and get all their information together, and they have to come with whoever sold or transferred ownership of business to them.
I'm Israel Lyon. Joy News Prime comes to you live from the Joy News studio at Kokomlemle here in Accra with digital address GA09925539. Stay tuned in. Now, first story, 2 lecturers of the University of Ghana who were featured in the BBC documentary on sexual harassment have been interdicted. Professor Ransford Jampo of the Political Science Department and Dr. Paul Kwame Buteko, a lecturer at the Department of Teacher Education, were captured in the Sex for Grades documentary, making sexual advances to undercover reporters who posed as students. Professor Ransford Jampo has maintained he's innocent of the claims made against him by the documentary producers and has threatened to sue. Less than 24 hours after the release of the full documentary, the university has decided both Professor Jampo and Dr. Buteko should step aside as investigations into the matter continue. A statement from the university's public relations office reads: The University of Ghana's attention has been drawn to a BBC documentary entitled Sex for Grades Undercover in West African Universities, fully aired in the evening of October 7, 2019. We would like to state unequivocally that the university places great importance on issues of sexual harassment and misconduct and condemn of any of such acts. Given that commitment, the Business and Executive Committee of the university is taking a decision to interdict Professor Ransford Jampo and Dr. Paul Kwame Buteko, the 2 lecturers featured in the documentary, to allow for further investigations into the matter. In line with the university regulations, the 2 will be invited by the Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee in the next few days to assist with further investigations into the BBC documentary. While the University of Ghana believes sexual harassment is fundamentally about exploiting power imbalance and voicelessness, we also understand the harmful impact it has on individuals, families, and institutions. It is for this reason that the university is taking steps to encourage students and employees to report any form of sexual harassment and misconduct, and has also instituted measures to punish anyone found guilty of the offense. In all instances where the university has been provided with information and or evidence of sexual harassment or misconduct, our Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee has investigated the matter, interviewed the parties involved, and after making a determination, we have applied the appropriate sanctions as outlined in the policy, including dismissals. The university will prosecute the current matter and the investigation in addition to all outstanding cases before the committee. We would like to state emphatically that the University of Ghana does not and will not shield any employee or student found to have engaged in sexual harassment or misconduct. No member of the university is considered above the law. Now, the university would like to assure members of the university community, including students, employees, our stakeholders, and the public, that it will continue to actively fight against sexual harassment, misconduct, and other acts of indiscipline. Further, to assure members of the university community and the public that the University of Ghana will use the existing structures to handle all matters of sexual harassment and misconduct while protecting the rights of the victims. It concludes, meanwhile, members of the university community are reminded of the provisions of the anti-sexual harassment policy and also encouraged to report any acts of sexual harassment and misconduct accordingly. To facilitate this process, additional communication channels have been created, and they leave a telephone number 02050-736-8053 and email hearmystory, one word, at ug.edu.gh. And this statement is signed by Stella Amwa, who's the Director of Public Affairs of the University of Ghana. Now, Professor Ransford Jampo, in an interview with Joy News, stated he will cooperate with the committee tasked to investigate the matter. He will, however, not comment about his threat to sue the BBC.
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. If you look at my responses to the BBC's allegations and all that, I made mention of the fact that we cannot talk about strengthening or building strong institutions if we don't allow them to work. And I believe that the University of Ghana has got its own credible internal mechanisms that can handle competently some of these issues. And so if the decision is to ask me to step aside while they do investigation, I think I welcome that decision, and I'll submit myself through the investigation processes. So I don't have issues with that. It's a step in the right direction. I will submit myself through the due processes.
Prior to this statement that you're receiving, were you in the know that the university was going to take such a decision? Were you informed prior to this statement?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm an official of the university. If there is going to be a public statement, it will be worthy that you are informed about it. So I had some bits and pieces of information about that, officially, that this is what would happen, and I've never had issues, with that, and so I would fully submit to the process. It's not going to be a witch hunting investigative processes. It's going to meet independent-minded human beings, and they will look at the evidence that they have before them and whatever they want to look at. And the most important thing is that I trust in the processes, I trust in the systems and mechanisms of the University of Ghana in handling some of these things, and so I don't have any qualms. So I'm hopeful that I'll come out. But the point is, we are not also prejudging whatever they're going to do. They would have their own evidence, and they would do their investigations and all that. So it depends on the investigations that they do. I don't want to sit here and say that before they start, you just say something to sort of predict the outcome when you have not even gone through the process. So please, let me submit myself through the processes, and then let's see the outcome. I'm sure that because I trust in the credibility of the mechanism and the committee, I'm sure they will do a good job.
All right, so he was asked in another interview what he would or what he has done about the threat to sue the BBC, and he indicated that he would not want to comment about that. Now, staying with the story, students at the University of Ghana have stated structures established to address cases of sexual abuse do not encourage victims to come forward. Some of the students who spoke with Joy News after the screening of the Sex for Grades documentary were of the opinion the setup favors the predators.
I think, like she said, the system is protecting the predators, and the problem is that you can't trust a system where you report to a lecturer who is a friend of the one who is abusing you. So I think more has to be done when it comes to the Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee. If it could be a third party or an independent party not affiliated to the university, it would be better, because you can't trust the people who are supposed to protect you, because they're the ones who are actually abusing the students. So for me, I don't blame people not being able to come out, because we live in a system where people are constantly shamed for what they go through. The perpetrators are the ones who ought to feel shame, not the ones who've been abused. And we live in a system where we are constantly shaming victims, and they are not able to come out, because anytime they come out, we always have useless questions or questions that don't make sense, that discredits what they actually have to say, what she was wearing, whether or not she was seducing the lecturer, where she was at that time. Those are irrelevant questions, because I think that we should stop asking these questions that don't matter, because at the end of the day, what we do is we continue to apologize for perpetrators and not really protect victims. So yeah, that's it for me.
The University of Ghana, in its statement on the interdiction of the two lecturers, appears to acknowledge the challenge highlighted by the students and has announced the creation of additional platforms to facilitate reporting. It reads that to facilitate the process, additional communication channels have been created, and that's where they leave a telephone number, and they have left the email address hearmystory@ug.edu.gh. We will be speaking with a rights advocate on whether the creation of these channels could help the situation. The incidence of sexual abuse is, however, not limited to university campuses alone, as there have been many complaints of this happening in offices, churches, and virtually every facet of society. The Minister of State in charge of tertiary education, Professor Yanka To, alluded to that on Top Story on Joy FM a while ago.
I fully endorse the University of Ghana action. It is beyond education. It is in employment, in HR. It's all over the place, in every sector of the economy, not just education. We should look at the issue of integrity, national integrity. In the area of education, it's all the more important, because the education sector is the area where you least expect one type of corruption or the other. And when it comes to promiscuity, particularly a sector where you have considerable involvement of churches, it is a sector that should be considered particularly sensitive when it comes to morality issues.
So how should society as a whole be approaching the matter so that we don't limit the conversation to what is happening at the University of Ghana or in the country's tertiary education sector alone? Frank Wilson Boja is programs manager at WILDAF, and he will be speaking with us on these questions that we have. Thank you very much for making time to speak with us, Mr. Boja. So the question is, how should society as a whole be approaching this matter of sexual abuse so that we don't limit the conversation to what is happening at the University of Ghana campus or in the country's tertiary education sector? Well, apparently there's quite a bit of delay between when I ask my question and when he hears it and when he responds. So I'm going to repeat the question once again, Mr. Boja. How should society as a whole be approaching the matter of sexual abuse and sexual harassment so that we don't limit the conversation to what is happening at the University of Ghana campus or the country's tertiary education sector alone?
him at all.
All right, yeah, we're listening. All right, let's listen before we get to Mr. Boja, because we're having some challenges with. Let's listen to what the students told us when we went to the University of Ghana campus last night.
Prior to coming to the University of Ghana, I have heard of certain cases and several cases of ladies coming on social media to speak on their issues when it comes to situations like this. And it's very difficult to report because they believe that Ghana has a system of protecting the elderly. So if there is any sort of issue against the elderly older person always wins. So it's very difficult, and in an institution like this where they don't want any sort of discredit to their name, it's very difficult to come out to talk about issues like this because they would always like to protect their staff, even at the expense of the student's life.
Okay. Well, we've been following the conversation on social media as well, and the feedback that we're getting is that it seems that it's widespread. I'm sure you have friends in other universities. What do they tell you is the reason they are unable to sometimes come forward to speak out?
I think, like she said, the system is protecting the predators, and the problem is that you can't trust a system where you report to a lecturer who is a friend of the one who is abusing you. So I think more has to be done when it comes to the Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee. If it could be a third party or an independent party not affiliated to the university, it would be better, because you can't trust the people who are supposed to protect you, because they're the ones who are actually abusing the students. So for me, I don't blame people not being able to come out, because we live in a system where people are constantly shamed for what they go through. The perpetrators are the ones who ought to feel shame, not the ones who've been abused. And we live in a system where we are constantly shaming victims, and they are not able to come out, because anytime they come out, we always have useless questions or questions that don't make sense, that discredit what they actually have to say, what she was wearing, whether or not she was seducing the lecturer, where she was at that time. Those are irrelevant questions, because I think that we should stop asking these questions that don't matter, because at the end of the day, what we do is we continue to apologize for perpetrators and not really protect victims. So yeah, that's it for me.
Interesting. You have watched the documentary. Jeremiah, I'll come to you shortly. You've watched the documentary. I'm not going to ask for a verdict. I'm going to ask you what you make of this documentary.
So watching it felt insulting and demeaning to me as a young lady, but then it was just a reminder of what so many people are going through in school, at workplaces, and I just felt ashamed to be part of this institution. But at the end of the day, it just reminded me of what I'm going to go through as a woman or as a member of society that protects predators, instead of giving room for survivors to speak their issues and speak their truth. We are always discrediting them, as she said, with questions that don't make sense. And this is what I felt like watching the video.
Well, a little bit whispered into my ears that you shouldn't be, embarrassed about this, because they're saying that they believe in the University of Ghana Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee to be able to do, a good job on this. But let me find out from you what you also make of the documentary.
Well, I still don't get it, how people can be so shameless, and the fact that people lack knowledge on what consent is and respect for female bodies. Even if, I don't really want to go into the documentary, but I think even if there was consent, listening to the language being used, how possessive and inappropriate they are, is just shameful. And it's more like we've gone so far, but we are still backwards, because people don't realize verbal sexual abuse is still sexual harassment. That's what people don't know. So I think we are still backwards.
Well, I've had opportunity to listen to Professor Ransford Jampo, and one of his line of arguments, is that she's not her student. The lady we are talking about is not her student.
It doesn't matter. We are talking about being appropriate. This is a man who has a reputation of, I don't know, he's well known.
All right, so we've restored the connection with Frank Wilson Boja, the programs manager of WILDAF, and let's get to him right away. So thank you very much once again for making time to speak with us. The question I've been asking for a while now is, how should society as a whole be approaching this matter of sexual harassment?
Hello? Israel. Yeah. I think that this should not be limited to the University of Ghana campus. It's something that cuts across from corporate bodies to every sector where we have human beings working. And there's also a power relationship. The unfortunate thing is that sometimes in Ghana we wait too long to put in place some of these measures. I believe that female workers have been complaining for many, many years, but we don't take it serious. We take it as a normal relationship or the domestic relationship that we have. So the important thing is that we should take it as seriously as it is now. The government of Ghana must be bold enough to introduce some of these safeguarding policies or sexual harassment policies at the workplaces, especially the government sectors, where we have a large number of people being employed by the state. The second thing is that the private employers should take it as a responsibility to ensure that the workplace is safe for every person working in that environment, whether a male or a female. Because in terms of sexual harassment, now it is not only the preserve of men to do that, even some ladies do that. So we should make the environment appropriate enough for everybody to thrive and offer their best to whatever reasons or objectives they have been employed for.
All right, Mr. Boja, whilst you were speaking with us, you indicated that in the institutions, other workplaces, there are processes, there are places where people can lodge their complaints. I want to know, beyond the institutions, beyond the universities, are there any other institutions that people can take their complaints to?
One thing, that is why we have the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. It is a body established for every employee in this nation, whether in the public sector or private sector, to be able to send any grievances. So the state has done well, at least by establishing such a body for us. Anybody who is also a victim or a survivor of such harassment could also even go to court straight to seek redress, and so or even report to the police. Now there's DOVSU, Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit, and the police as a body, you can report at any time. Or for me, if anything at all, you should also seek for legal counsel. Anybody with legal background to help you, or anybody with psychological background to help you when you face such issues. So we should not limit it only to SHRAJ. Any available institution that we need to report to as workers, as employees of any organization, we must take that bold initiative to do that.
But I'm sure you'd also reckon, Mr. Boja, there are many people who would choose not to actually report it at all and would prefer to rather suffer it. And then there are others too who also don't see themselves as victims of sexual abuse. They actually feel that they actually benefit from it and wouldn't want to report it. How do you handle such situations?
You know, sometimes it's very, very, very difficult to take such bold initiative. Personally, when you called me, I was wondering whether I should respond to this sexual harassment issue or not. Because, for instance, Prof. Jampo, we were made in school, in the same department, currently teaching my own daughter. You see? So it's sometimes very difficult to take such personal decision to report somebody you have direct contact with. But what we've been saying as gender advocate and people who work around gender-based violence and some of this sexual harassment issue is that if you don't take that bold initiative report, what happens is that it cascades into other areas. Probably the victim today will be able to work on herself or work on himself to endure that pain. It is not everybody who will be able to stand that stress or that kind of harassment. And so we need to take that initiative to be able to address such issues across board. In many international organizations, what they do is that when you employ, and even from time to time, you need to sign what we call a policy, sign to the policy that you will abide by it and all that. So I will also ask if the University of Ghana, for instance, have put in place measures that have compelled staff, whether lecturers or non-academic staff, to sign on to such sexual harassment policy. And that is very important. If you sign to it, then you bear the consequences. But when you said that we have introduced a policy, and sometimes we introduce the policy without even sensitizing the people who should benefit or not, then we are in great danger of probably causing more harm than even just introducing the policy. Policy introduction means nothing if we don't take the practical step to teach the people involved or to teach the stakeholders why and how they should report on such things,
all right,
and the consequences thereof.
Now, Mr. Boja, finally, I just want to also ask you this. There are others too who are supposed to be victims of sexual abuse but don't see themselves as victims. They actually feel that they're probably giving what they have or using what they have to get what they want. Could that be a reason why there will be some who decide that they don't want to actually report it at all? It
is just the unfortunate orientation that as far as I have something and I can use it to gain something out of it, that is fair enough. No. As far as there is a relationship, in this case, power imbalance, somebody who is your lecturer or somebody who is your director, or somebody who is your supervisor, and you want to engage such a person in such a relationship, no, it should not be so. As far as we stay in the workplace, and sometimes, for instance, organizations like WorldUp, we have a policy that you cannot even date your colleague, or if you want to date your colleague or marry, one of you should resign. So some of these things should be clearly stated in some of these policies to employees of any organization so that they don't fall foul of that policy. It should be explicitly explained to every person who works in such organization. But I want to say that these issues that we are discussing today have not been just yesterday or today. It had been there for many, many, many years. Even when we were students in the 90s and all that, we heard about some of this harassment from some other lecturers.
Right.
And so it's an issue that we need to address. And I believe that even now, if the religious bodies, people are coming up, the Pope himself was making comment about certain amorous relationship between fathers and sisters. When you go to the Pentecostal churches, it's there. When you go to the Charismatic, it's there. When you go to the Orthodox, it's there.
Yeah.
And when you go to the schools, they are there. Okay. In the workplaces, whether in the police service, military, they are there. And that is what we need to work to stop it.
All right. Thank you very much. Frank Wilson Boja is a rights advocate and he's with WorldUp. But in another development, the police is warning the public, especially ladies, against taking nude photos of themselves. The warning, according to the police, has become necessary because more women are falling victim to criminals who blackmail them using their nude photos. The phenomenon, known as sextortion, is said to be the third biggest cybercrime incident in Ghana. Director of the Cybercrime Unit, Chief Superintendent Dr. Gustav Yangsing, who has been speaking at a training session for police personnel in Kumasi as part of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, says despite the public education, the incidence of the crime is not abating. Kwesi Deborah has more.
Dr. Yangsing says more people, especially women, are falling victim of blackmail by unscrupulous persons on the internet. He cautions internet users to desist from putting out their detailed personal information.
Sex extortion basically means they use sexual images to extort money. So, to explain it to the simple, the ordinary person, the criminals would get your sexual images that you may have taken and mistakenly lost your phone, and the phones will get out to the criminals. They take it, they call you that, look, we have your picture. If you don't give us money, we are going to put it on the internet. Then people get scared and start paying. But the bottom line is that I see these cases every day. Our young girls, their nudity, nude pictures are out there, and it's not too good for them. And one thing about the internet is that the internet doesn't forget. And if it gets to one person, it may get to millions of people. You can't control it. So one of the few things that we want to tell the ladies is to be careful. Yes, and possibly do not take nude pictures of yourselves.
Cybersecurity Month seeks to demonstrate Ghana's cybersecurity readiness. It's a collaboration with Communication Ministry and National Cybersecurity Center.
The use of digital devices have become quite pervasive now, and we are all using it, and the criminals have also taken advantage of the fact that we are moving from the physical space into the cyberspace. They also want to partake of the opportunities in the cyberspace. So currently, all the criminals have also moved there, and as a result, we are having cybercrime. So cybersecurity is just a process, or a process of ensuring that your computers, all your digital devices are protected from the computer itself to the data inside the computers and the people using it.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Deborah.
We have some news coming through. We have confirmation that James Opombuenu has been confirmed as the substantive IGP. Last week we knew that the Council of State was considering his appointment as given to them or presented to them by the President. So it's on the Facebook page of the Ghana Police Service, and there's a congratulatory message to the IGP, Mr. James Opombuenu, on his appointment as Substantive Inspector General of Police, an extension of service for 2 years by the President of Ghana in accordance with the Constitution. The police administration considers both the appointment and extension as confidence reposed in Mr. Opombuenu and endorsement of action started by him to prevent and reduce the fear of crime in the country. Heartiest congratulations, IGP, Mr. Opombuenu. West branch of the Coalition of Rotation Nurses and Midwives for 2019-2020 is accusing government of delaying in paying allowances due them working as national service personnel. The delay, according to them, has worsened their plight. The convener of the coalition addressed a news conference in the Upper West region, from where Rafiq Salam reports.
According to the Upper West branch of the Coalition of 2019-2020 Rotation Nurses and Midwives, they started the mandatory national service in April 2019 with colleagues from across the country. The national service postings were done randomly, irrespective of your geographical location or preference. They were therefore posted to various hospitals within the country. On arrival at their various facilities, they faced myriad of challenges, which included accommodation, paying of utility bills, feeding, and transportation to workplaces and many others. Despite these challenges they are grappling with, they claimed the government has refused to pay their service allowance after working for over 6 months. Sultan Fabian is the convener of the group.
We would like the government to tell us what crime we have committed to deserve this kind of punishment and callous and uncompassionate treatment. Again, we would like the government to tell us whether the nurses and midwives mandatory national service is no more relevant to this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a saying that empty sacks do not stand upright, and that a hungry nurse is an angry nurse and a potential killer. Let's think about the above statement and juxtapose the undesirable situations of these personnel against their very critical roles in the provision of quality service.
The 2019-2020 rotation nurses and midwives are also not happy with the way the Ministry of Health is dealing with issues relating to their financial clearance.
A follow-up was made to the Ministry of Health by some representatives to find out why the delay in release of financial clearance and when it would be released. Accordingly, a document which the Human Resource Manager at the Ministry of Health said was the clearance was given to one of them to be read to the hearing of the rest. In the said document, it was stated that a total of 8,062 nurses and midwives have been cleared across the country. The said clearance was dated 1st April 2019 and will expire in December 2019. Friends of the press, in view of the above, we believe that the government has not released any financial clearance to the 2019-2020 year group of rotation nurses and midwives. It was just a game they are playing to deceive us, to stop worrying them. And we want to state again that both Ministry of Health and Finance do not care about the welfare of we, the rotation nurses and midwives.
The coalition was appealing to their members to exercise restraint. They are pushing for their legitimate demands from the government and has preferred these suggestions.
The right financial clearance should be released and made accessible to us through the previous channels, that is, through the various human resource managers to the facility human resource officers, not later than 11th October 2019. The government should ensure that the agencies responsible for the payment of rotation nurses and midwives are fair and transparent in delivering their duties. The agencies involved in the processes of staff IDs generation and biometric verification should speed up the processes. The biometric verification process should be decentralized to the regional levels where members will not have to travel to Accra and other far places for such an exercise.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafik Salam. Wow.
Elsewhere, the country's nurses and midwives have been tasked to be abreast of healthcare trends and respond to changing times in their delivery care services. Speaking at the 4th Annual General Meeting and 2nd Scientific Conference, President of the Ghana College of Nurses and Midwives, Abigail Che, says healthcare professionals must strive to use appropriate technology to generate more accurate reports to promote effective healthcare delivery.
The theme of maximizing technology in accelerating universal health coverage, the role of nursing and midwifery in the era of specialization, and the supportive specific objectives which are to empower nurses and midwives specialists with skills in innovation and technology use towards the achievement of the universal health coverage, and to advocate for enabling environment for integration of ICT into nursing and midwifery practice across the different levels of the healthcare system. The Ghana College of Nurses and Midwives, through this meeting and 2nd Scientific Conference, is sending out a clear message to all nurses and midwives on the need for our two professions to be abreast with current technology to help in the achievement of universal health care. The role of nurses and midwives, play in the provision and attainment of quality health care is very crucial worldwide and cannot be underrated. Moreover, our two professionals work even much better when we gain opportunity to acquire more knowledge and skills in our various fields of specialization.
Health Matters was brought to you by
Camel Buy and Fly to Dubai promo.
Got this. Say yes to life.
Former President John Dramani Mahama has called on leadership of the Ghana Bar Association to work towards expanding legal education without compromising on quality to bridge the yawning gap of demand for legal services in the country. The opposition NDC is calling on the Ghana Bar Association to conduct an introspection of the quality of teaching that goes on at the law school to address what has become perennial mass failure of students there.
The stakeholder meeting forms part of the opposition's initiative to consult with key institutions as part of efforts to draft a manifesto that reflects the aspirations of the people. Speaking at the meeting with the leadership of the Ghana Bar Association in Accra Monday, General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, called on the Ghana Bar Association to re-examine the quality of teaching in various law schools to address what has become perennial mass failure.
We should be talking about what is the optimum levels that can help us maintain the market premium and help us to also achieve the objectives of the profession in a democratic society without compromising the qualities. But as a teacher, I don't think that if you do an exams and only about 7% of your people pass, you should be able to examine yourself as to the quality of your teaching and other things, what has gone wrong.
Former Member of Parliament Benjamin Kumbo says the Bar Association must be concerned about why 90% of the students who fail the entrance exams in Ghana pass similar exams in Britain and other African countries.
The evidence we have gathered so far is that almost all those who didn't get access to the Ghana Law School went to Rwanda, went to Gambia, to Nigeria, into the United Kingdom. The statistics show that 90% of those people were called to those bars from Ghana here, and they have come back and done their post-call. So the question that we are asking, how can somebody go and be able to pass the exam to become a barrister in England, in Wales, and the same person cannot even pass an entrance exam in Ghana?
Responding to concerns raised by the opposition NDC, President of the Ghana Bar Association, Tony Forson, says Parliament must take the blame for the mass failure because they insisted on the removal of the interview aspect of the test, which could have seen many more lawyers qualifying to practice as lawyers, insisting entry into the legal profession is purely by qualification.
It was simply a matter of pure performance. And unfortunately, when we were passing LI 2355, you were there. Parliament told us that we should take out the interviews. At least if the interviews had been left, many more people would have had a second opportunity to go through the interview process and get enrollment. But Parliament said, if you do not take out the interviews, we will not pass the law. Before God and man, if you will be honest, sir, that's what you told us. And that's how the law is, at least. If you deny, the law will speak for itself. LI 2355 took out the interviews.
Former President Mahama also called on the association to, among other things, reconsider the entry examination by incorporating international practices.
How do we expand, legal education without compromising quality? That is important. Let's not say that because we want more lawyers, we're going to do a mass production of lawyers, and then based on that compromise the quality of the legal representation that people have a right to have access to. And so I think that that is an issue that should engage us, and I thought that I would raise it as part of the discussion that we have and see how the Bar Association can make its voice heard, looking at what best practice is across the world so that we can give opportunities for those who have the potential and the capacity, to pursue a legal education and work in their chosen careers.
The decision to cancel the interview aspect of the entry exams, according to NDC MP Inusaf Hussaini, was to reduce the entry barriers.
Admissions at the law school.
The government is this year spending 2.4 billion cedis to keep the free senior high school running. But despite the huge financial implication, it says it will not review the program. Addressing students of the Sunyani Senior High and St. James Seminary Schools as part of the President's tour of the Brno region, Education Minister Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh says government will push through the social intervention program.
There are governments who pay lip service to education, and there are governments who put in money in education. The senior high school this year, Mr. President, will cost 2.4 billion Ghana cedis. To undertake the senior high school this year will cost the Ghana government 2.4 billion Ghana cedis. Money that could have been used for many other things, but money that you decided it is best to invest in the future of the country. Mr. President, thank you. Whether it is textbooks, it is supplementary readers, it is revision notes, it is school uniforms, it's house cloth, it's house dress, it's PE kits, even PE kits, government is paying to invest in the future of secondary school. When you came into office, His Excellency, there were a total of 880,000 students who had registered in 2014 to 2016. Of that, the attrition rate of that number who never completed was about 20%. His Excellency, the President, in that we have the final cohort in school, the green track, so I can talk about what we have done now. In 3 years, between 2017 and now, we have moved total access from 880,000 to 1.24 million Ghanaian children benefiting from senior high school.
The first beneficiaries of the free senior high school will write the West African Senior Secondary Certificate examination next year. President Akufo-Addo is demanding nothing but excellence from them.
Here as students, it cannot be all books. The books is the key, but you have to have an opportunity also to broaden your mind, to do things outside the classroom that will broaden your mind and then give you exposure and an opening of your consciousness. We want well-rounded citizens to animate the future of our country. But most important of all, the example that you're going to set will be next June, when you will be the first senior secondary students to take the senior high school exam. There are people who want to see you stumble, who want to see you fail, so they can turn around and say, we told you so. And the challenge, which I know you are going to meet successfully, is that we have excellent results from the first lot of senior high school students.
Earlier, the President inspected ongoing reconstruction of the Sunyani Airport. District Chief Executive of Builsa South, Daniel Garba, says he has requested traditional authorities and the clergy in the area to intervene in suspected spiritual attacks at the Fumbesi Senior High School. A total of 11 students reportedly passed out after they saw strange objects. Daniel Garba, who is also the head of the District Security Committee, says they were forced to close down the school following protests by some of the students.
Around 10 to 11 thereabouts, where we had information that a female student who was at the dormitory around press time fell from a story building. She said that, in fact, she saw a strange being appear before her. She tried to identify what exactly it was, but she couldn't. And then what she could realize is that she was on the ground from the second floor. She complained that she could not see properly. She had lost the sight in the process. Just the same night, when she shouted and they ran out, 8 other girls collapsed. And they were also rushed to the hospital and resuscitated and were discharged the following morning. So Another incident happened the night of the event, where male students went on rampage, attacking watchmen. The headmaster's watchman was attacked. The house mistress's house was attacked, and some other properties were vandalized in the process. Somewhere around 12 to 1 that we heard that some other students were also fallen. About 10 of them were taken to the hospital and were also taken care of. So given the situation in which it was, the Director of Education, conferring with the regional director, came to the conclusion that it was better we close it down. Some of them said that in an attempt to enter their dormitories, you just get weak and fall. And that's the explanation all of them gave.
The doctors point anything medically related to those who were collapsing?
Not exactly. Actually, suspected was that because of the fear factor that had ensued there the previous night.
Do you suspect anything spiritual?
We can't rule that out. We're living in a physical and spiritual world, so that much we can't rule it out. So even as a result of that, I have engaged traditional rulers, the landowners of the area as well, to look at it. I've also engaged the pastors council within the district to also take a religious look at it as well. So we need to approach it from all facets.
If you say look at it, what specifically do you want them to do? Members of the clergy, you want them to pray? The traditional authorities, what exactly do you want them to do?
Yes, the traditional authorities, they can also look at it from the traditional point of view. I am told by a former headmaster of the school that it ever happened, and they brought in the traditional authorities to come and do some purifications around the same environment where the girls are today. So we can't rule spiritual implications out of it.
The prime suspect in the killing of Otumfuo's sub-chiefs has, for the second time, been remanded into prison custody by the Sukori Mampon District Court. His lawyers, however, say they will proceed to the High Court in a bid to secure bail for him. Anwar Sadat Mohammed was arrested in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, after 6 others were initially arrested in connection with the murder last August. Nanaya Ojima has more in the following report.
The court, presided over by Portia Molly Anafosalia, remanded Sadat Mohammed to reappear on the 17th of this month. Prosecution prayed the court not to grant the suspect bail since investigations are ongoing. Here is Police Inspector Edward Kwame Adade.
The accused person was brought here on the charges of murder. Now, we haven't been able to conclude our investigations. So, since it's a first-degree felony, even when investigations are concluded, the duplicate docket has to be prepared and sent to the AG's office for advice. And after the advice, that will know where. But once it's a first-degree felony, definitely the case cannot be tried in the lower court or the district court unless we take it to the higher court. Initially, he was in our custody, that's the police custody. But today, I pray to the court to remand him into prison custody. So for now, he's going to the prisons, being able to conclude our investigations. So we still need him. So if he's released on bail, he is likely he will tamper with our investigations.
The body of the Asamponhene, Nana Kojo Afodo, was found in his vehicle near a boom on the Ijra and Kransan Road on the 18th of August 2019. Mohammed Sadat was subsequently arrested in Burkina Faso following collaboration between Ghanaian and Burkinabe police. Lawyer Stephen Alewaba, holding brief for substantive counsel John Indebugri, says they will proceed to a higher court to apply for bail.
That is a surest option, because seriously he needs to be granted bail. Under the laws now, every offense is bailable. So now notwithstanding that the court is saying that it's a felonious offense and it can't grant bail here, that does not mean that it's an offense that can never be granted bail. As far as the laws are concerned, every offense now in Ghana is bailable. So this is one that can also be considered in that spirit.
So as I indicated, PM Express is going to be talking about the sexual harassment, the cases of sexual harassment, and moving the conversation away from the universities. Do stay tuned in. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Israel. Have a good night.